I was waiting for him.
The Hypno-Toad has arrived. The TCU Horned Frogs, Boatin Blake's team, have advanced to the national championship to face the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. Welcome to the Weekend Spread. With me today, as always, we've got Jameson Maxwell, Ty Lee, and the captain triumphantly sailing home on the seas from Arizona. Okay, that didn't really work. But Boatin Blake. And look, we are going to dive deep into the Fiesta Bowl. We're going to dive not as deep into the Beach Bowl. We're going to dive deep into the national title. But Blake, it would be foolish to give anybody else but you the first words on this. How you feeling? What a moment.
Yeah, what a moment. One that I never expected myself ever to experience, and I know we're going to go into it later, but my initial reaction whenever we had the final kneel that sealed the deal, I blacked out. I dropped to my knees, and now I have a giant bruise the size of a softball on the inside of my thigh from landing on the cup holder in front of me and banged up my hip, so I'm hobbling everywhere, but I was in tears. Like, I bawled like a baby whenever it happened because I could not believe what I just witnessed. It was the most stunning, shocking thing ever in my entire life. The emotions, I could not believe it, and they say, like, the fans, their hearts aren't as in it as much, but I feel like one of the players after that, how banged up I am. But I'm recovering, and I'm ready for LA.
Blake took a cup holder in the knee for the Frogs. What are you, nobody else has that same dedication. I love it.
How many tears were actually shed, Blake? Like, do we have any did Sarah take any videos of this? I need to
Sarah
see
might have had. I know she has some photos. I need to see if she has a video because it was full blown tears. Like, my face was wet. Like, I could not. Like, the guy next to me had to help me up and hug me. Like, it was that intense. And of course, I'm in the middle of the Michigan section, so if they would have panned the camera up to the heavens where I was sitting, you would just see this lone TCU fan there just bawling his eyes out. Wow. Somebody next to me takes a video, and this random guy in a cowboy hat that I did not know just hugging me. It was a magical moment. One I will never forget. Never learned the guy's name either, but we embraced, we hugged for a long time. Very magical.
That's incredible. It's like the patron saint of Ty or something, you know, a fellow cowboy hat enthusiast. Okay, let's. We're kind of completely free flowing on this one. There's zero structure, so we're just gonna
just a bunch of boys hanging around talking some football right now.
Bunch of guys being dudes. I have a horny toad. Right, I got myself a no free ads, a horny toad. But we're just guys being dudes talking some football. So
for people on the podcast, that's a beer that he's drinking. He's talking about the Coop Horny Toad.
Oh, yeah,
obviously, I think there needed some context there.
No,
Bobby's drinking an endangered species that's protected by the government.
Blended frog. Ugh, gross. Okay, so let's go ahead. We have plenty of time to talk about TCU, the triumphs. We'll get into that in a moment. But let's move to the later game. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl between Ohio State and Georgia, an absolute classic, ending with probably one of the worst field goal attempts you'll ever see from Ohio State. A very valiant effort. But Ty, I'll have you start on this. Were you surprised with how Ohio State played Georgia here?
I was. I think I was pleasantly surprised. With Ohio State, I think they kind of shocked me. I think a lot of people put a lot of weight into that Michigan game. I think partially because there's all sorts of those biases. You know, Georgia is the defending team. They're also the SEC team. So everyone assumes that they're just going to be the dominant ones. And then Ohio State was a bit of a question mark going through the season and then dropped their game against their one real big opponent. So I think it was surprising to see Ohio State's performance. Is that indicative of Ohio State just playing really well, even though they lost on what is, I would say, a freak play? Or was Georgia down, or did we truly see the best of both teams? And I think if I'm sitting in Blake's seat, certainly I'm hoping that what we saw in this Peach Bowl game was the best of both teams, because that would indicate that this Georgia team is in fact beatable by this TCU team. If we do a little bit of transitive properties, but I think these games are recent enough that that's maybe not that bad of a comparison. Saying, hey, we beat a team who just beat you also in a championship game, maybe the strongest transitive comparison you can make.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the TCU standpoint, looking at the way Georgia played in this game, like, okay, they're not unstoppable. That Missouri game was pretty much the only time the whole season they looked somewhat beatable, and everything else was just, they just blew by all their competition. Ohio State put up a fight, but let me tell you something. It was because CJ Stroud had a really good game, and their wide receivers, Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison, whenever he was healthy, just lit him up. And to be completely honest with you, that's kind of how you can beat Georgia. You have a great passing attack to where you don't let their big athletes get to the quarterback and stop the run and control the game. Max Duggan needs to throw the ball better than the way he did in the semis. Yes, TCU won. They had a lot of big plays, but he missed a lot of balls. I don't know about you, Blake, but I feel like he had some accuracy issues. And this is, TCU could have ran away with it. And there were a lot of balls and a lot of drives that got stopped because I think Max Duggan's accuracy was a little bit lacking.
Yeah, like, if you go to that, it's like Max, like, the tape was out on the K-State game that if you blitz and put a lot of pressure on Max, it's really hard, like any other quarterback, for him to escape, him to make accurate throws, especially when on the move. But you also look to it, TCU game planned very well whenever they saw the blitz was coming, because they started doing those max run back 10 yards, do the crossing screen across the field, got 2 touchdowns off that same play. So there are risks. It opened up Diamarcado to start in the running game a little bit more. And yes, like, Georgia, I think, is going to present a lot of challenges with that defense just from a pure talent standpoint. But the good thing is, I'm very fortunate that this is not the Georgia team from last year. We saw their secondary really get shredded, and I just don't think the SEC was good enough this year to test this Georgia secondary. But against a competent quarterback and some good wide receivers in Ohio State, CJ Stroud was ripping them apart. So I think, although they could probably do a good job, linebackers, pass rush, all that stuff, stopping the run, they're going to be vulnerable over the top, more than a Georgia team that we've seen the past few years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They definitely showed weaknesses to me. But I want to say this about Ohio State before we talk a little bit more about Georgia and everything. I was ripping Ryan Day basically from the moment the Michigan game ended. I thought that this team had no toughness, no heart, and I thought they were going to get completely dominated by Georgia. And I got to give props to Day, got to give props to Stroud. They came out and had an excellent game plan, got Georgia out from the jump. That last little rally at the end, though, look, Stetson Bennett, I think it's time we start talking about him as just one of those guys, one of those absolute just gamers. In big games, he goes in and he gets you wins. And sometimes it's just too much. But Ohio State, I got to give them a lot of credit. That was a really big time performance when they really needed it, even though they didn't get the win.
And what's so shocking is CJ Stroud, had his best game of his career, and one that I did not expect, because my knock on CJ Stroud, he has all the physical tools, he has all the weapons around him, but he just seems very timid as a quarterback, that really he's a one-read guy. He only has to make 1 or 2 reads in that Ohio State offense, and if not, he could run. But I saw him actually go away from that, get a few more reads, really step up in the pocket and actually run the ball, not being too timid to get hurt. He felt like his life was on the line in this game and played like it, and he just played such a better game when he was doing that versus a really good defense in Georgia. He needs to, when you're talking about him going to the next level, he needs to play with a little bit more heart, and we finally saw it, I feel like, for the first time in his Ohio State career, because that's always been my knock against him. I felt like he was a timid passer, really just utilized that Ohio State offensive system, which is great, and those good weapons around him. But I think Georgia forced him to make decisions, and he really rose to the occasion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Ohio State really, like you said, they came out and they did what they have to do to win a football game, and it's absolutely dominating the offense side of the ball. Defense side of the ball was still lacking, and obviously that's when you talk about toughness and you talk about getting on Ryan Day. it's just their defense just doesn't have a lot of that toughness in them. And they have some big name players, but it seems like they just weren't like the Ohio State defense of the past. So I'm really curious to see how Ohio State's going to bounce back next season. Obviously they're going to have the front runner for a Bolendikoff, but a brand new quarterback in that room. And you got plenty of good wide receivers around for that brand new quarterback. So it's going to be an interesting year for sure. And so isn't JT and Tuimoloau a sophomore too? And so they've got a lot of pieces, a lot of big names that, draft guys will be talking about. But can they come out and actually have a team? Or is it just going to be a bunch of 5-stars again like this season that can go out and make plays but aren't doing it in the end?
Yeah, and I think that is the big question, is bringing it together. And, I'm not going to fault them too much. This is a very good Georgia team. It's hard to beat them, especially in the dome. It was a lot. Yeah,
but it's like their offense played, like Ohio State offense played to their peak is the thing. They absolutely killed it. The thing is just their defense just didn't have it to do one little thing to stop Georgia. Georgia's offense is going to falter every once in a while, but obviously they have some really big playmakers. But there was just too many points, honestly. And Ohio State didn't have as much firepower on their offense side, even though they did everything they could to bail out a couple runs of their defense.
Absolutely.
It cannot be, because this game to me, we've well established on this podcast. Any longtime listener knows I am the casual fan here. So this game to me was just so. We have to touch on the vibes, as the kids would say nowadays. I mean, you got to rewind the clock just so we remember what was going on here. I mean, Georgia, defending champs, they were the expectant to win the game pretty decently. They're down, they're struggling. It's in Atlanta, and Ohio State is lined up to kick a game-winning field goal as it turns New Year's in Atlanta. It could not be more. I don't know if Georgia has their own Sooner magic. I know they have it because we just saw it, but I'm trying to imagine, because we just touched on, and we'll get back into it, the TCU fan experience. And I know Georgia's the defending national champs. It's, this game, they have a lot going for them, but I just cannot imagine being a diehard Georgia fan in that moment in seeing that field goal, because you just knew you were going to lose. You knew it was going to be a squib kick. Time was going to run out. There was nothing you could do about it as the clock strikes midnight. And it's just that Bulldog magic, that, big fan that the city of Atlanta put in the stadium to blow field goals away if the Falcons or the Bulldogs are going to lose or something. Or maybe ESPN put it there so that the SEC team always wins. Don't get Blake going on that one. But we got to, because I feel like the conversation's sort of winding down on this game. And obviously we're doing it a bit of a disservice if anyone is a fan of these two teams and they're listening.
Absolutely.
But we just had to touch
casual.
on. Yeah. But there's just the vibes of that. That is an all-time classic of a game. It's just absolute crushing blow to Ohio State. Certainly, I don't really know that this was their year either way. Not trying to kick them while they're down. Ooh, kick them. That was a double insult there. But yeah, it's just the vibes of this game. We're so immaculate. That's what college football is all about.
I mean, oh my God, the vibes are incredible. And, it's one of those excellent uniform matchups. Ohio State and Georgia, they just look good together on the field. And I got to say, that was just
too many stripes.
Too many stripes.
I can't do both teams have a central stripe on the helmet, even if they're completely different. It's just not. And then they have the side stripes. Oh no, too many stripes.
Is this like the first world problems version of college football?
Maybe a bit. Too many stripes. No, but I'll say this: it was just a great game. Just perfect college football. I'm totally with you. And I'm sure there are so many Atlanta / Georgia fans who have experienced so much heartbreak. They're like, oh God, it's back again. When they teed up for that, but just such a cool moment. Blake, did you get to see
they scored 17 points on their last 3 drives. So it really wasn't like an Atlanta Falcons choke. It was an absolutely great comeback that ended up working out for them in the end.
Yeah, but true. But Atlanta sports have its way of finding new, different ways to be torturous and sad. But Blake, did you even get to see any of this? Really?
I got to see like the fourth quarter, so I didn't understand like really how bad Georgia was down. I kind of like was watching when Georgia was doing the comeback, so it took. I saw like the highlights and stuff like that, but yeah, I was not paying attention to this game all too much.
I don't blame you. I'd be buzzing. I'd be vibing. So, anyways, let's move on to the real game, the one we're really here to talk about, the Fiesta Bowl, TCU and Michigan, another classic. By the way, best semifinal round ever, easy. I would say
the easiest. That's the easiest statement ever.
Yeah, both games, absolute bangers, absolute classics. So yeah, let's get it, Blake. Vibes entering the stadium. What was your heart rate like? What was it like?
Yeah, so while we were tailgating out of the parking lot, me and some of my friends, a few words were said, but it was relatively quiet for a usual tailgate. We watched the end of the Texas Tech TCU basketball game, watched the Frogs get a victory over Cactus Gang once again, just like we always do. Texas Tech is definitely going to talk about how there are more Tech fans there. That is true. There was definitely more Tech fans there, but they will forget that we were all in Glendale. But honestly, outside the stadium, I thought TCU could fill this thing 75-25. There were so many more TCU tailgaters than Michigan. I don't know if it's the proximity to the stadium. I guess Texas being like a 15-hour drive, 30% of our students are from California, so a lot of Southern California kids. 5-6 hour drive, not too bad, versus Michigan just being across the country, but TCU came out in full force, and we really represented. I know in Scottsdale they said it was basically all purple, no Michigan people were there. I was staying downtown, saw a few Michigan people in our hotel, but besides that, didn't really see many till I actually got into the game, and it was split about 50-50. Like, it was even a more impressive showing than, like, the famous picture of us in the Rose Bowl where they have the flyover and you could see, like, the half purple, half red of Wisconsin. It was honestly a way better showing than that, and I thought the crowd energy was electric. Y'all were right for those types of games. It just feels different once you get there. It's the nerves. You think you would just be happy to be there, especially a team like TCU who's kind of smaller, first time. Nope, you're immediately locked in. You're not even thinking about the chance of like, oh, this is just a great season. We wanted to win that game, and then when it came off to such a hot start, that was it. It was hard to deal with because on one hand, you're like, oh my god, this could really happen. But on the other hand, the guy next to me, my cowboy hat friend, we get up like 14-0. He's like, it's over. It's over. We killed him. I'm like,
oh, no,
up.
I would have hated
shut
that.
Up. I was like, shut up. And I was like, literally the entire time, just at war with this guy, being like, it's over. Even when Michigan's coming to storm back, that's all he's saying. He's saying this all to the Michigan fans, like, y'all are done. You're finished. And I'm like, shut up.
How did you get put into the Michigan section if you bought them through TCU?
Yeah,
no,
hey,
so
Blake, I heard that TCU didn't even sell all their tickets. So why did you have to
As Darren Rovell's like, they didn't sell all their tickets before the ticket allocation deadline on December 5th. I'm like, that is the most arbitrary deadline. Like, people haven't even thought about their travel plans to get to the national championship. Like, at that point, it's the most ridiculous thing. But so the ticket allocations are higher for the national championship than they are the playoff games. So I was towards like the back of the season ticket holder line. So a lot of the season ticket holders did not get tickets. So I had to use like some Fiesta Bowl trustees code on SeatGeek to like backdoor me into like unlocking these special tickets that you can only see when you type in a code. And it's all in the Michigan section. So you could tell who used the code because you would see just sprinkled around the 400s little pockets of purple that were like desperate to get tickets.
Frogs.
Which I should have waited when Southwest canceled all the flights and like people were having a fire sale. Like I could have gotten ones of the 100s for like maybe a little bit more expensive than what I paid at the 400s. But I guess you can't predict a weird, like it's not even weather. It's like a weird logistical shutdown by one of the more reliable airlines.
I
That's
kick
true.
myself all the time with buying tickets and trying to get them at the cheapest point possible. You guys know me. I'm horrible about that. And honestly, you just can't do it. Just get the tickets whenever you need them. And if they're less tickets whenever you're going for them later, good for you. But don't damn yourself. It's just like selling stocks.
The key is just not to look.
Yeah, that was my problem. I looked and it like made me, it was just like, oh, that really hurt. And yeah, but I had all the hotels, the flights, like really the hard things that like people just didn't have and were having to like drive to Phoenix just because the flights were so limited. So I had all that. So I just had to pull the trigger, get my tickets in the clouds and just enjoy the game from the Eagle's Nest.
Incredible. I gotta say, so a big theme of this game, kind of, that kind of unraveled afterwards to me. I think it was a lot of like arrogance on the Michigan side, both from like their fan base and as we saw from the players. One of their linebackers not knowing Junior Colson not knowing if TCU was in the Big 12. He didn't know what conference they were in, which that's what happens when you disrespect.
I just don't know if that's arrogance. Everyone's saying that's arrogance. I think that's just pure unintelligence is what it is, because everyone who pays attention to football knows who's in what conference. Like, I don't think that's like I'm just so much discounting TCU that I don't know their conference. I think he just doesn't pay attention to college football that much.
But still, it's like he doesn't care enough to know what conference the team he's playing is in. It's not like a pop quiz. Like, I wouldn't know what conference UNLV is in. Like this is a team they've been supposedly preparing for weeks.
Yeah, and you kind of felt that vibe. Like I think from both the fan base and the players, like. The other big quote coming out of the preseason media days was JJ McCarthy going up there saying, if they run the 3-3-5 against us like they have all season, we're going to shred them, which was just embarrassingly bad when you throw two horrendous pick sixes, which kind of decided the game for you. And then
Absolutely.
also the super cringy quote that we heard, and we'll probably get to this later about JJ McCarthy and his family, but him going over to his family during the middle of the game and saying, we're gonna win this, like, don't worry, we got this. Like, not like in the like getting your team pumped up way, but it is weird to like go over to your parents during the game and like still feel that confident after you've put your team in such a bad hole from your play. So you could just tell, I think they were just, especially how they started the game, they did not expect us to come firing out of the gates, especially on the defensive end, that we were just throwing things at them that they had never seen. I thought Joe Gillespie called really the perfect game because we've talked about on the weekend spread like all year long. It's like our defense is not a defense to stop getting points on the board. It's more of a down-to-down defense that in critical downs being able to scheme something up to say take 7 points to 3 points, or get a good turnover on downs that can really change the game and give the ball back to our offense. And he did that fantastically. Like, they did not know where our linebackers were coming from. We were creating motion. They were just had gaps open that we had one guy with 4 sacks, like that we never really had pressure on the passer all year long. But I just think that kind of goes to the point, like, their fan base then doubted us. Like, their fan base just felt like their energy was just, like, we're kind of here, like, we're not going to waste all of our money on this game. Like, we got a national championship to go play for in a week. And those vibes were just everywhere. But they were stunned. The Michigan people around me, super nice, but just absolutely stunned by the performance that they gave.
I didn't think we were going to be talking about JJ McCarthy's family and how close he is with his pops.
Okay,
let's
just go. We could go in on this now because like I rewatched the game several times, DVR'd it, and I thought like I had recorded the wrong stream because all we saw was the JJ McCarthy reaction stream of his family. It's JJ McCarthy and his family both. That's all they would show the entire game. Anytime he would do something good, anytime something would go well for Michigan, they were always showing his family, and you would think would think Max Duggan was Harry Potter, like familyless, because of how like, dude, like could they not put a camera on like Max Duggan, the runner up in the Heisman race? Their parents so proud. His father was his football coach growing up in a small town in Iowa. One of the most wholesome stories, but ESPN is gonna ESPN and kind of pulled the Catherine Webb, Brent Musburger kind of situation, and just had the camera glued on his girlfriend, like glued. It was after every play. I'm like, how many times do I gotta see this family give kind of the same reaction? And then, of course, the weird grazing, like, I don't even know what it is. I'm just like, this just makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't even know how to feel about it, but it was basically like, I thought it was like the coach's stream, the Pat McAfee stream. I thought it was the JJ McCarthy show, because that's all they were following that entire game. It was insane. Did y'all think that? Like,
yes, no. Well, I was making a joke about the finger, but that too. That's also what we can talk about. Do you know what I'm talking about, Blake?
Yes, where he's like, that's what I was saying, like
good.
with his hand, like doing like the weird like
good.
graze, like the Urban Meyer.
He's doing like when the scanner at the airport like beeps on a zipper and then gotta like do the backhand.
It's the most like that's the most uncomfortable whenever you get patted down when they have to go like this. It's like, honestly, I'd rather you just like grab me like at this point. Like this and it was so uncomfortable.
It was just the girl's phone in her back pocket too. Like it was just all of her hardback for phone. Cringe. We don't have to talk about that anymore. But whenever you're talking about how close to JJ McCarthy with his family, didn't think we were going there. But yeah, it just. Obviously, everything was centered in Michigan. Of course, that's what they had planned for. Yeah. And TCU just absolutely slapped them in the face. That first stop on 4th and goal, unbelievable. And then that pick 6 to take it up to 7 points. That was so huge for momentum because it felt like TCU controlled that game until the very end whenever there was a little bit of uncertainty.
Yeah, like we were kind of fortunate there in the end. I think like maybe I don't feel like we do well with leads. Like, we kind of played down all this year, and I think our offense is built to take shots and not try to, like, drain clock, get 4 yards. Like, we're trying for the big play, and, like, that's where, where lethal is, like, if you're having to defend the big play, like, that's when you can get good runs, not when they're expecting you to run 3 downs in a row. But, yeah, besides, like, kind of that, besides maybe the 4th quarter, like, even that 3rd quarter, like, it just felt like we were trading haymakers, that, like, every time Michigan would get close, we would get the Quentin Johnston big run, we would get, another pick 6, like, we kept on just pouring it on them, and it was just an amazing feeling because that truly showed it's like TCU belongs here. Like the way in which multiple times in that game they had to react to a Michigan team that was starting to get hot and that talent was starting to finally click, and them just being able to react every single time. Like it showed like TCU is way better than people think on the national stage, like significantly better because of just how they responded.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for me, the biggest thing was the resiliency. You know, the ability to take those hits and still respond with another haymaker. You know, I feel like we've seen teams, you know, get up big and then, you know, the other team storms back and then you fall apart. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Perhaps, you know, maybe a specific recent example of a team getting a massive lead and then blowing it. Nothing comes to mind, especially not any games in Arlington, Texas, featuring the Tulane Green Wave and USC Trojans. But anyway,
had to go there.
I had to get my dig in, you know, because that's the thing is it's hard to have a big lead, get excited, and then that feeling of, oh no, everything's going to go to hell. And TCU just didn't care. And that was one of the things you brought up in our preview, Blake, is, you know, there's just no pressure. It's house money with the Frogs. And, you know, I think that was very evident in this game because they just rolled with it. They just kept doing what they do. They didn't try to change the way they play because of the circumstances. They just put their foot on the pedal and kept going. And I think that was really admirable. That's a really, yeah.
And I also think, like Jameson kind of alluded to it earlier, I don't think it was our best game. Like, I don't think it was, like, we kind of talked about in the preview, like, I thought it was going to have to be more of, like, a God game by everybody to, like, make sure TCU's still in this and win this. But TCU played pretty sloppy. And, like, Max Duggan, he was inaccurate. I don't think the 2 interceptions weren't on him. They just weren't on him. They were weird deflections that bounced off
It was
the
just
receiver's hands.
a bunch of missed
Yeah.
receivers, and like on third down and like second down, like really big time, downs to go.
But it is like the good thing is like we finally found a way to deal with the blitz. Like the blitz gave us problems against the first half of Texas. The blitz gave us a problem against K-State when they're basically blitzing every play. But like the good thing is when you have a guy like Max Duggan that's super mobile, like he can still gash you. And like that's what gives me a little bit of confidence going into this week is like Max still could run. Like Max, they were still able to like get plays like those wide receiver screens. Like that's how you execute a wide receiver screen, not whatever like you hike it immediately just throw a bullet to him. No, like Max did a great job of luring the defense, luring them the guys in, and then hit an open Quentin Johnston. And like that's the guy I think definitely the MVP of this game. And what I've been telling y'all all season, like Quentin Johnston is a good deep threat, and we saw that in this game. Like he caught a huge, like big time deep ball, but like this guy is so good on the short and intermediary routes. Like he's such a yards after catch guy, and with his size and his frame and his speed, it's fantastic. Like, it's fantastic to watch. And so, like, that was so good seeing, like, on the national stage, especially seeing that he's probably going to be our player that's getting drafted in the first round. Like, he could do everything. And seeing his ankle be healthy and not just having him as, like, a decoy kind of in the Big 12 championship where he was only doing vertical routes and nothing else, like, that was amazing to see.
Yeah, I think one thing before because I feel like we're naturally starting to move on into previews, and I have some takes on that. But one thing I did want to touch on, and again, I'm not trying to kick a team or an individual while they're down, and I'm not trying to pander to Blake or any other Frog audience we may have. But I really felt like this game specifically, what we saw was TCU was just better coached as well. I think that was a really, really crucial factor in this one. I mean, Blake, do you have any thoughts on that? I'm not necessarily trying to, Harbaugh can't win big games or whatever else, or is his mind elsewhere? But I just felt like TCU, they obviously outplayed them, they outscored them. That's how they won. They obviously wanted it a lot more. They had that hunger. But I feel like going into this, from getting the people focused, hyped up, and well prepared, I really feel like TCU, we're just really starting to really put an exclamation point on Sonny Dykes' resume in his first year as a head coach.
Yeah, the coaching performance on both sides of the ball were fantastic, and I know it probably doesn't show it as much in the final score just because we're only 5-6 points wins, but starting out that defense really set the pace, where in the first half, you had them, I believe, twice in their own red zone, and both ending in, or not twice, or multiple times, one ending in a fumble, but getting up basically 2 field goals that entire half. That's an incredible win for a team that I think on all the red zone possessions went out, like, it was like only 4 times that they didn't get points. So they really game planned well from a down-to-down basis. I felt like they put a lot of it, they were just like, we will let J.J. McCarthy try to beat us. And I know Sonny Dykes said that going into the game, and J.J. McCarthy on some plays had some excellent throws, but really, like, he's not experienced enough yet in those big games where he has to make big throws, and we kind of saw, like, he was a second or two late, he wasn't making the reads properly, and kind of forced him, if we got the blitz on him to run, we had him where we wanted him. And so on the defensive side of the ball, I definitely saw that. And then offensive side of the ball, whenever TCU got cold, we were able to game plan ways to get our biggest players involved. I thought the run game and just how we schemed it with Amari DiMarcardo, like, this guy, our second string, like a very good second string, but like, my God, just completely turns the tide and comes in comes in and for an injured Kendre Miller, one of our most underrated players, and lights it up. And so I just felt like they were able to always adapt to what Michigan was doing on the defensive side of the ball and didn't let their athleticism bully them. And that's like another funny thing about the ESPN broadcast. They're like, "Oh, like Amari DiMarcado is just struggling a little bit now that now that Kentre Miller went out, and he had like over 100 yards at that point. Like it was just a total just like miss of like, wow, like how are you watching this game and not see the impact that this guy's having?" But yes, I thought these guys, those our two coordinators, Riley, Gillespie, they're going to be head coaches in the next 2 years probably. Like they're going to get head coaching gigs, if not like excellent Power 5 coordinator positions, because they are like two of the best in the business right now.
Well, there's rumors going around about Garrett Riley right now. So
yeah, and like, but that's I always like, I was like, I worry about them leaving. Like these guys have been so good, but like that's kind of the mark of a good program. Like you got to find ways to reload. You got to like have a good coach that can evaluate talent, and Sonny Dykes did it the first time, like found two guys, one that has kind of followed him for a few years, but Joe Gillespie came from Tulsa. Like many people, like he just won, probably he was like his game plan won TCU that game, and he was coaching for Tulsa. Not their head coach, their defensive coordinator last year. Like that's how good we were at trying to find coaching talent, and so yeah, the game plan set it all. Like we set the pace and just never let Michigan take it back over.
It is weird as an Oklahoma fan to hear a fan of another team talk about having two coordinators, because it's been, 6 years now since Oklahoma has had both an OC and a DC in addition to a head coach. So
we've got one right now. We've got one right now.
Yeah, well, we have a figurehead now. Yeah, at least.
He's
so
just
step
there.
in the right direction, I guess. But
Laser beams.
Yeah. Well, so Blake, other than the game-winning play, what would you say was probably the moment you freaked out the most?
It was probably the Quentin Johnston run. Like that was just so electric. Like just seeing the little hezzy hay, like it was just the slightest of stutter steps that just like got the Michigan defender all wobbly, and then he just like turns on the speed. Like that was like those big plays, the pick sixes, of course. Like whenever like a pick six happened, especially in like those big moments, you're just going bananas because you don't expect, like it's the one thing you don't really expect. So like I would say those two. The thing was, like, I was just so nervous the entire game. Like, I thought, like, they were going to come back. I was like, we were the comeback kids this entire time, and now Michigan's going to do it to us. But seeing in hindsight, I think we set the pace so well. Like, it was just, it was magical. It was magical. It was just like, I wish ESPN would have captured more of the TCU responses so I could kind of relive that feeling and like see the reactions on other people's face. But I don't get to do that. But it's just like, oh my gosh, it was just like an emotional explosion the entire time.
For sure. I mean, I can only imagine. I bet it was incredible.
How are you feeling going into the national championship? Honestly, sorry, Ty. Do you got anything left? You got notes?
No, I was gonna say, Blake. I think we'll use a cooking analogy here. I think it seems that Bobby and Jameson and I are all on the same page here. I think we've let you marinate in this happiness and this joy of victory and getting a trophy for this team. That was one of your concerns: is if we lose the playoff, we're not gonna have a trophy for this team. Well, we've let you marinate in this happiness. And I think it's about time we put you on the heat and start cooking. So one thing that I see really going into this national championship game is Max Duggan is that offense. Not to diminish anyone else, but he runs a lot. He throws a lot, obviously, and he takes a lot of hits. He gets dinged up. And not to diminish Michigan or anyone else that TCU has played so far, but they ain't played the Georgia Bulldogs on defense. So I think to lead into this national championship stuff we're about to talk about, how concerned are you that the Bulldogs are going to go out there and just put some hits on Duggan and have TCU on their back foot as soon as they touch the field?
Yeah, if you would have asked me that a week or two ago, I would have been very worried, just because the Georgia I think of is the Georgia that dominated last year, where it's just like their defense was so suffocating that you could barely put up 13 points. But seeing the final score and also seeing the impact CJ Stroud was able to have on that game kind of puts me at ease a little bit more. I'm not saying like CJ Stroud is obviously a better talent, has a better arm, probably faster, better runner, but Max Duggan can fill a similar role. And I think Georgia did not play enough of these running quarterbacks this year to be able to defend against like kind of a dual, like kind of triple threat, because you have the run from the running back, run from the quarterback whenever things fall apart in the pass play, and then the big play pass. And so I'm nervous, I guess, about the pressure just because we saw Michigan put a lot of pressure. I'm not as worried about the secondary. I think TCU can get some big plays on that secondary. They just have to buy Max enough time to step up in the pocket and make those throws, which last week was hit or miss, but when Max needed to make the big throws, he was able to. So, in short, I feel better. Like, this team's obviously going to be significantly more talented than Georgia, but I think they are vulnerable enough in the secondary that TCU can get some of the big shots that we've seen all year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the script that you had versus Michigan's going to flip. It's not likely that you're going to be going out there and getting big stops on fourth down again and getting a pick six. Like, TCU has came from behind in many games, and this is going to be a tough game. Obviously, 12.5-point favorite. Can y'all be scrappy enough in between and kind of get one, the way that you did versus Baylor and all of these other games this season, like a Texas? I think the biggest thing for me, we can talk about Max Duggan, we can talk about the passing attack, but like a healthy Kendre Miller is probably one of the biggest things for me, because that guy is so underrated. And whenever y'all's offense had him, there was a little bit, obviously y'all were doing still decent without him, but I could tell like you lost a significant dimension of your offense without Kendre Miller. And with kind of that little knee sprain that he has, hopefully the week and a half that he has to rest will be enough.
Yeah, like that definitely is worrisome, because you could tell DeMarcado kind of by the end of the game, like he was gassed. Like he had to do, especially when Michigan's bringing the blitz every time you're passing, like he's basically has to be another offensive lineman in the pass block, and then was ripping off big runs. So it does worry me, because I think our running game this year has been so effective because we kind of had a little two-headed monster that we can get a little bit of change of pace, that we can give Kendre Miller a rest. Because if you look at Kendre Miller's stats, like they're excellent, and he has significantly less carries against your Blake Corums of the world that were really the workhorse running backs. Like, he's been a workhorse in the sense of how many touchdowns and yards he's produced, but we've been able to give him a lot of downs off, which we kind of need for a Georgia defense they're gonna send the heat on us. And Kendre Miller is a great pass blocker too. It worries me, but there's also on the other side, like, there's two, I think, big injuries in this game. One being Kendre Miller, the other being Darnell Washington.
And Stetson Bennett's also a little bit hobbled too, that he was playing through an injury.
But I think Darnell Washington is big, and I know it's not their first, they're not their tight end one, but the Georgia offense is so lethal because they could run these two tight end sets with two like elite pass catching tight ends. And like, if you talk about situational matchups I'm worried about, I think our linebackers have been fantastic this year, but there's a difference between being fantastic and having to guard like basically what was Gronk, Aaron Hernandez of like college football. Like, they can create so much over the middle with so much athleticism that if it like means Kendre Miller's out, like if Darnell Washington is also out, I would probably take that, just because like
Wow.
we're gonna have so many problems with Brock Bowers. We can't give him another weapon in order to just gash us. Like, I would rather take Stetson Bennett with the receivers than those two tight ends that can just basically do anything. They're so freaky athletic.
Yeah, and I mean that's a hard thing to game plan against, because you don't encounter that in college football. Like, it's so hard to have the depth where you can have two guys who could really cook like that. I'm thinking like, I don't know, Calcaterra's freshman year, him and Andrews, like that kind of was a thing.
That's the closest thing we can think of, and that's not even close.
That's what I'm saying, is like, it's rare enough that you can even get two tight ends that can produce, let alone two ones that can absolutely kill you.
Yeah,
Mhm,
and
yeah,
so that's what I'm just hoping.
Darnell Washington is not the same thing as freshman Grant Calcaterra. If we're making that comparison, I'm saying you're not doing a 1-to-1, but I don't even think you can even bring up that as a comparison because it just was not that. I think the Aaron Hernandez Gronk thing is about as close as you can get.
I agree. I was just saying it's rare that you can even get to guys that can really do what they do. And you're right. Calcaterra obviously far away from that, but it just in terms of like it's hard to even get to like tight ends that can actually catch balls and perform. Like you can put them out there and they'll actually do well. So no, I'm with you. I think it's going to be that's going to be brutal because again, those wide receivers are also insanely good. Absolute burners. We saw it against Ohio State, who, keep in mind, is pretty solid. That is a solid defense, and they torched them. And I think that's obviously a concern as well. But it's a tall task. But look,
Bobby just wants a segment to talk about Lad McConkey.
Lad McConkey. I hope he's doing okay. I think he got hurt. Lad McConkey, best name in football. Well, maybe not best name in football, but the best name with the best production at the same time somehow. But anyways, I do want to talk about. We kind of talked about this with Michigan. I feel like Georgia's not going to overlook TCU at all. Like there's no
I don't.
That
think
is out the window.
Yeah, even if they thought it before, they're not thinking it now. Like after that game, and Kirby Smart's like a fantastic coach that he's not going to let them. Like they're not. Although Georgia had an excellent team last year, like they're not at the level of like the Alabama. Like they could just like show up and roll people. Like they have to still put together good performances to like start this dynasty.
They're going to roll into this like it's Missouri.
I hope so. Yes, I would love them to roll into this like Missouri, get that like give us a chance at the end because that's all I can really ask for in this game is like give us a chance to at the end to win this because I don't think we're gonna see a repeat of last year or last week for sure. I don't think we're gonna get that hot on defense. Like 2 pick sixes aren't flying through the window again. You're not gonna get some of those big special teams plays probably as much. But, like, Bobby and I talked about when we previewed the semifinal games, I think the advantage of TCU just plays so many different styles. Like, they've won in so many different ways. They've game planned in so many different ways. Like, teams like Michigan, Georgia, even Ohio State, like, they have very definable identities and ways they want to run their offense. And they're able to because they have freak athletes that basically like you kind of have to bend to their will, and TCU is like a flex, like it's a Swiss Army knife when it comes to how it does things, which we've seen like has been to our benefit. We're able to catch teams off guard in the beginning of the games, and we're also able to adapt. We've seen like Baylor, we've seen OSU, we saw K-State like come in the second half and still keep ourselves in it. And I even think, like, this past week, I think the offense clicked a lot better in the second half than it did in the first half. So it does make me excited to watch this game just because, like, going into it, I never know what TCU is going to throw out there. Like, I don't know the ways in which they're going to try to win just because they kind of have to keep you on their toes due to the lack of talent. And so, like, that's what I'm excited for. I'm excited to see a style in Georgia that is just so dominating, and I know exactly what it is, but what the hell is TCU going to do to try to stop it? And, like, that's going to be I'm hoping a fun ass game to watch because I do not want the blowout. I would be very sad and disappointed if it's a blowout.
That's a pretty bad way to end the season. I know firsthand, getting blown out of a
12 and a half
championship game.
point spread. Ugh. I just if Georgia covers, that's just a sad game.
And like the spread, like the reason why it's so high is Vegas has to take into account the talent discrepancy, and like I think that's why TCU is also a really good team against the spread, is because they significantly punch above their weight on a week-to-week basis that they're hard to handicap. Like they were still, whenever things opened in Glendale, we were 10.5 point dog. It got bet down pretty quickly because everybody was all over the Frogs, and even this one, I think it opened at 13.5, bet down a point for the national championship game. Like there is steam, and I think people do realize like the Frogs can keep it close. Like there is a way for us to keep it close, but it's going to be hard. But also at the same time, like, I'm glad we're getting Georgia now with 1 week's prep versus Kirby Smart having 4 weeks to prep against us. Like, I think that also helps a little bit. But wish we had the time to heal Kendra Miller, though. That would be nice.
For sure.
Yeah, it's always scary going into a national championship game knowing that you're facing a coach who made a cameo in The Blind Side. I have a question sort of about TCU, just general atmosphere. But Blake, I wanted to ask, sort of in short, what do you think Georgia's? Because you're the TCU expert, right? And we want to keep it a little bit, maybe a little more balanced. But I want to hear from you. What do you think if you're Georgia and you got to beat this TCU team? You talked about the uncertainty. Well, you didn't specifically say the uncertainty of planning against TCU, but you talked about the versatility of what this TCU team can present to you and the scrappiness, how you can never count them out, and all these other things that we've talked about. If you are Kirby Smart, if you are on the Georgia staff, what is your game plan, just sort of in short, to beat this TCU team?
I think on the defensive side of the ball, you're dialing up pressure immediately. I think Michigan kind of took too long to realize that. And in the second half, they're like, oh, if we put pressure on it, like, good things can happen. I think Kirby Smart comes out, is really, really physical, bringing a lot of blitzes. And that's not really Georgia's game just because they have superior athletes. But if you're Kirby Smart, you got to trust that your corners and some of your other guys can play man, zone really well, like that can cover, and just hope you can get to Max Duggan. Because when Max Duggan is pressured, he, like, good things can come from it, but also very bad things. Like, if they're just so overwhelming us that Max can't even find ways to step up in the pocket or bounce on the outside, like, we're screwed. We saw it against Texas, and Texas did a fantastic job, just bullied us, and just, like, we could not game plan it correctly enough. And, like, we were thankful that our defense showed up and were able to stop them, but you want to put TCU in a hole early like that, especially with your Georgia, because I think this is the team that you're not going to come back against, like one of these big second half ones. So defensive side, I think dial up the pressure, trust that your secondary can cover the guys. Who knows? We saw last week that might not be the best plan, but and then on the offensive side, get the tight ends involved. I think TCU has proven time and time again we can stop the run. We're not afraid to stop the run. We stopped Donovan Edwards, who injured, but still a good running back. Bijan Robinson held him to only 30 yards. Deuce Vaughn was the only one that kind of really shredded us. And so we're able to stop the run. So just get your tight ends. If you have both, if not one, just get Brock Bowers involved early. Make those linebackers really have to cover. And so TCU can basically not have to put any pressure on you, and you get just clean pockets and Stetson Bennett just waiting for a guy to get open. Because, like, if we're having to dedicate our linebackers, our safeties, everybody to try to cover Brock Bowers along the middle, and Stetson Bennett has time, like, he's not a slouch. Like, he can make plays with his feet, with his arm. Like, good things can happen if they do that.
Yeah, and as mentioned when we were talking about the Ohio State-Georgia game, Bennett is such a great big game player. He's been here before. He's won a natty. He is... I feel like there is some comfort there for Georgia, but I will say as well, like TCU, I don't think will be fazed too much by it. They haven't shown any, I don't know, fear yet. I might change for this, who knows? But my bet is that's not happening.
No, I think this team truly believes, like, they knew, and I think that's, like, kind of the difference. Like, everybody keeps on talking how we're, like, a Cinderella, and we kind of are. Like, we are in the sense, like, preseason expectations were low, and we did that, like, we did this. Like, we're in the national championship. But, like, TCU as a program as a whole, like, in the last close, like, 13, 14, 15 years, like, had a chance to possibly play for the national championship 3 times. Like, it was that close. And so I think the good thing is there's kind of that mentality in our program that, like, even though people haven't seen our name and logo out there all too often, we have been close. It's just you're not following the sport close enough. That we had a team in the 2010-2011 Rose Bowl that was 3rd in the nation, and, like, probably, like, you're not going to put them in, like, the first go round, but then the 2014 fiasco and how that laid out. And then this year, like, we've had quality teams we don't shy away from the moment, and like that's what makes me feel good is that our history has been we've been kind of shunned, not thought about, but whenever we've played those bowl games, we didn't just like be like, oh, this is a letdown. Oh, like we were meant to be in the national championship, like we're not going to show up. Like we won that Rose Bowl, we destroyed Ole Miss in that Peach Bowl, and we out physicaled and outplayed a really good Michigan squad, like a really, really good Michigan squad. And so I'm not worried about TCU just like flopping over and just feeling like the moment's too big for them, just because I've seen our program time and time again show up in these moments and really show out.
Yeah, what do you think? High scoring, low scoring, back and forth, game of runs? Like, call your shot right now.
Because I think TCU's gonna win, it has to be high scoring. Like, you're not winning a game where it's in the 20s. Like, that means Georgia's just kind of dominating you. Like, if Georgia scores 28 points type thing, and if you're playing that defensive battle, you're screwed. Like, I think you're just screwed against a Georgia team that's really experienced, have done this before. Like, you kind of need the third quarter of the Fiesta Bowl to open up a little bit, that you're just taking big shots, hoping big mistakes or big plays are going to happen, just because, like, I don't trust our offense enough on, like, a down-to-down basis to be super methodical on drives. Like, we need the big shot. So we need high scoring. We need it to open up, and we just kind of need Georgia's secondary to always feel like they're on their heels. I don't think we.
So a TCU win is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, there's no way. Like after seeing what happened in Michigan, there's no way I'm just like, oh, Georgia's gonna win this. Like no, like TCU stunned me in the way that they played. There is no way in hell I'm choosing Georgia in this game. It's gonna be it's gonna be TCU money line all the way. Like
it's
I'm
got
not.
It.
It's got it. Like
surprise.
So
A surprise pick by Blake. No one would have guessed that he would pick TCU to win this one. Shocking turn of events.
Yeah.
I truly am thankful to like see that Georgia can struggle. Like that is really nice that even in a big game they can struggle and they can allow like their defense could be porous, because I think as a Big 12 team that's what you always worry about. It's not necessarily like I think your offenses can match up pretty nicely again or like your defense to their offense like pretty well for an SEC offense, but you worry about just the defense being way too physical and just like plows you over. And I think, although I'm scared of Georgia up front, I'm just not scared of them in the secondary. So if we can get some quick routes, some big plays, like we have a lot of playmakers. Like it's sneaky because Max Duggan is the one who gets all the praise, and rightfully so. Like he's been the leader of this team, but we got plenty of weapons on the offensive end that we can use in order to get yards.
Yeah, no, I think TCU does have the weapons to keep this close. I don't know if they win, but I think it's going to be a really interesting game. And I will say overall, I think TCU's run has definitively, if there was any question, has definitively like hammered home that the playoff was a good idea, and moving on from the BCS, like where it's just a 2-team like national title, bad idea. Because this run has been truly special, and if we still have 2 teams, just like this would be a TCU team that ends up in a New Year's Six / BCS Bowl and is just kind of there. But I think it's truly special what's going on. It's one of the greatest stories in college sports history. What they've done from '96 to now, left out in the cold after the Southwest Conference dissolved, and then just that long build up back. Through the the WAC era and all that to this is just really, really remarkable.
Yeah, it truly is. Like just even being a little retrospective this week, it's just this is something that is surprising yet unsurprising at the same time. Like this is what we were always building towards. How it's surprising is I didn't expect it to be without Gary Patterson. I didn't expect it to look this good and this quick, and that's the stunning part, in the part that I just can't believe, the fact like this small school, 9,000 kids is playing in the national championship. Always one of my favorite chirps from all the opposing fan bases, like Georgia's doing it a little bit to us, Michigan did it to us, like so small, like stadium tiny, 36,000. It's like, well, we just beat the team with the biggest stadium in all of America. So it's like we're not scared of that. this is going to be big for the brand, like big recruiting. And not just that, I think it's big for the school. It's like, for a little TCU history lesson, whenever we won the Rose Bowl back in 2010, 2011, we saw a big boom of California kids come to Texas. Maybe the original Don't California My Texas, but our student population then became about 30% kids from Southern California. And now they're expecting, I think usually we get like maybe 25,000 applications for our school. Maybe we're expecting over 50 this year, just from this success in the national stage and the brand awareness that we're getting from this. Like, this is huge for our school. It's huge for our recruiting classes. It's
Crazy.
huge for our, like, this is massive. Like, it's the same reason why people from all over the country go to Alabama. It's like the same reason why, like, they do it to OU, they do it to Georgia. Like, they want to see good programs play, and like, this is just, TCU could be building that in a new Big 12 that I think really advantages them. That we might see one of these again, maybe.
I mean, a TCU championship would be just earth-shattering, I think, for the state of college football and the state of Texas in college football. It changes the game entirely, I think. I don't think... I think the run in general has mixed things up. I think it's very clear to me that TCU is the best program in Texas right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like what the national media think of Texas and Texas A&M is really what TCU has been for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Like,
but
they've been the premier Texas program, but they get none of the hype.
No, but I think what Bobby's saying is TCU could beat the Texans for sure. But like, I think they could give the Cowboys a run for them. If they played the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, TCU would win that game. So I do think TCU best
I would say
program in Texas.
TCU definitely, if they played the Cowboys, would have the coaching advantage. I 100% believe that. So.
Oh man.
What if Sonny Dykes went to go replace Mike McCarthy? Like, you get Mike McCarthy gone. But now the savior of your program is with the Cowboys.
That's a great. Honestly, that'd be a really good thing, because he knows
think
Sonny Dykes is gonna leave eventually.
I don't know. See, but I thought about that. Like, we thought Gary Patterson was going to leave for the longest time, and he just never did. Like, there's something about giving those guys the shot, and, like, TCU can pay not as good as some of the big public universities, but, like, pretty dang close, and your job security, like, as we saw the last time, you got a lot of job security. You got to, like, really royally, like, mess it up in order to get fired.
It's going to be... Blake, it's going to be rough for you.
Oh, we just did the Geico commercial, didn't we? We totally did the Geico commercial. Gary Patterson, that was his only head coaching job, right?
Yep.
So maybe a little.
Blake, it's going to be rough when Sonny Dykes is on that G650 to Gainesville, Florida, in a couple years.
Oh man,
no,
that's funny. Yeah.
You know what? I have a closing thought before I turn it over to you guys, because I think we're wrapping up. Yes. I have heard some people say, as Blake said, some people are calling TCU a Cinderella story. Those people are not familiar with this TCU team. And frankly, I don't know that they're all that familiar with the story of Cinderella. What was Cinderella, right? She was the stepsister or whatever. She washed floors for a living. That's what she did. And then she used magic to reach a better life, to marry the prince, become a princess or whatever, right? Cinderella is about having a job where you do hard work and you use magic to escape it. That is not this TCU team. This TCU team does not shy from hard work. They do not use magic to get where they've got. They do the hard work. This TCU team is the American dream. Any red-blooded American should be rooting for this TCU team. They're playing against the defending national champs. Okay, you're not, Georgia, poor Georgia. Nothing ever good happens in Georgia. Probably true. I don't necessarily like Georgia, but they're the defending national champs from the SEC. TCU did this. They did the hard work. They said, put us in the hardest positions that we can. We'll take anyone you put on our schedule. We will face them. We will defeat them. We will put in the work in practice. We will put in the work in the film room. We will put in the work in the weight room. It does not matter how many stars are on our recruiting profiles. We will use the talent that we have. We will put 100% effort by 100% of the players every time we go out there. We might throw some interceptions. We might, take some big hits. We might get knocked around. They might have a better game plan. We are going to do the hard work. And they went and they did the hard. They said, oh, we're a small school. We're not a blue blood. We're not from a major conference. TCU shouldn't be here. TCU shouldn't be in the Big 12 championship. TCU shouldn't be in the playoff. They did the hard work. They shut out the haters and they said, we're going to do the hard work and we're going to work and earn our way to where we know that we belong. And that is what they did. It's not a Cinderella story at all. There's no shirking out of hard work, using magic to get wherever you're trying to go, magical slippers or whatever else. TCU said, I know where I want to be in that castle like Cinderella. I'm going to get a job washing the floors in the castle, and I'm going to work my way up, and eventually I'm going to own that castle. That is what TCU is doing. Are they going to win? No, I think the Dogs cover this one easy. But TCU, they are not a Cinderella story. Any red-blooded American should be rooting for them, not because they're the underdog, but because they put in the work to get where they wanted to be, and it is so refreshing in college football nowadays to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess is it me or
that's a great way to. That's a great way to cut
I know.
I'm excited for this game.
You got me fired up. I wish you wouldn't have said Dogs are gonna roll, but I liked the other parts.
The only thing more American, right, than rooting for the hard-working guy is just following the money. I gotta follow the money.
You gotta be on both sides, right?
I'll be cheering for the Frogs the whole way. But
what's
I'm not
the Mac quote
on this? But
what's the Mac quote where it's like you're on the fence so you never lose, or what? You got?
No, I'm playing both sides, so I always come out on top.
Yes.
I'm fully emotionally invested in TCU, but I just wanted to throw my pick out there. Right on the pick 'em, I picked Georgia. I think if I were to put money on this, which I'm not, full disclosure, if I were, I would use DraftKings promo code TPPN.
Damn right.
And I would put it on the Dogs if I had to, but I don't have to. Because I live in America, free country where you can work hard, and I choose not to use my hard-earned money on betting on this game.
Okay, that's fair. Jameson, your pick.
I unfortunately think Georgia's going to cover. The Kendre Miller injury, with it being a knee sprain, the way it looked, he's not going to be 100% if he's playing. It just worries me too much that if you don't get up big, coming from behind with this Georgia team is exceptionally tough. I still think it's going to be an entertaining game. I just think Georgia wins by a couple touchdowns.
I like TCU to cover. I think they do enough to keep it close, but I think they lose. I think Georgia's just too much, frankly. But look, I was wrong last week with Michigan, so who knows? But no, I don't know. I think TCU can give them a really good game, potentially pull out a win. We'll see how it goes. But I'm looking forward. I think this might be one of the better national championship games we've ever seen. I'm very excited to watch it. But Blake, I'm so excited for you to get this moment. It's gonna be so cool. But I gotta ask, are you prepared for grown men to bark at you?
I thought about that. I don't think I am, but I kind of am. I hope, somebody has to bark at me at some point while I'm there. I hope that's not just something I've heard on the myths. I hope
I got barked at in my face.
That's what I want. I don't want, I feel like the problem is, TCU is, not seen as intimidating, so their fans don't feel like they're just kind of, stay back. Michigan fans are so nice. They just, really weren't up in my face. I was in full blue, and they get onto you maize. It's yellow,
maize.
I saw a tweet that a Michigan fan was yelling at the rental car lady for calling it blue and yellow. So I guess it's maize, but
maize.
But yes, it always worries me. TCU's just kind of it's such a good feel-good story. It's you're not gonna bark, or you're not gonna really trash the St. Peter's fans last year in the NCAA tournament. That just feels a little wrong, but I don't want that. I want the barking. I want to get barked at the entire time. I'm not in a Georgia section this to go around. I'm with the Frogs, but in the concourse, I want a grown man barking in my face.
Okay, then you gotta start doing some riff ram Tim in his face. If you want to get a little bit back, you got to push it forward. So you got to be confident whenever you come into that stadium.
Oh, I will. Like, I came in with confidence last time. I was not timid for the moment. I am so ready for this. I might die. Like, I might die if we win this game. Like, I went into, like, full-blown, like, blackout shock, and that was a semifinal game. And, like, I had a few drinks, but, like, really wasn't drinking that much during the game just because I was so focused on the actual game itself. So, it was, like, kind of solely just my body. So, I don't know what will happen. Like, if on the off chance TCU wins this game, I don't know what's gonna happen. I have no idea.
I cannot wait to see if TCU wins what that like acid trip, like crazy, like I don't even know what to call it. The little video they post after every win, that the national championship winning version of that is going to be so off the rails. I really need it.
I need everything. I need everything. Like, now that I'm here, it's not just like, oh, we've had a great season, I want this. Like, this was my really my one team that I support that I never felt super confident would ever win a national championship, like, or even be in a national championship in my lifetime. Like, it is just the most improbable of the teams I root for, and it's the team I root for the hardest. So the fact that we are here, I need everything. I want the Frog fans are going to be out. Like, it's going to be a great. Darren Rovell won't say it, but there's going to be plenty of TCU fans there. Trust me. Like, people are scrambling anything just to get their hands on these tickets. That's not an issue for our fan base. Like, we're going to show out, be loud, and I think it's just going to be. I cross my fingers. I think this is going to be an excellent game. It's just going to be a clash of styles, make fights type of game, and I'm ready to see it in action.
For sure. Hoping y'all can get revenge on Georgia for us. So.
Yeah.
You know what?
And a sneaky revenge game. The
Liberty Bowl in 2016.
We lost to Georgia, so revenge angle.
I'm changing my pick to the Frogs. I can't go against the Frogs. Everything I said, I'm emotionally invested in them. I'm not putting money on it. I have no reason.
You would feel like a mercenary supporting the Dogs. You would just feel like you're doing it. I would just
feel. See, I'm a known hater in college football, but I have to get something out of it, right? I have to. And it's not that I feel bad for like kicking the Frogs while they're down. Like, I'm a known Group of 5 hater. I love to kick teams while they're down. Oklahoma State, I'm coming for you. But OU, OU is a perfect example of that. Biggest OU hater right here. But I've been on the Frog train for many reasons. Blake and I are going to do an off-season pod where we just discuss all the fans that TCU has gained. He talked about student applications. Unfortunately, the term T-shirt fans applies, but people who did not go to the school but just become fans. I think TCU, that DFW Big 12 team, it's no matter how this game goes, they've gained a lot of fans this year, I think, in DFW, and that is really going to help them because ticket sales, merchandise sales, all that. That's what gets your program going. That's the nitrous in your fuel to just really get revved up. So.
I think how unique TCU is, the whole Hypno-Toad thing, and they just have such a unique, fun culture. I feel like so much college football it can be a little stodgy in some ways. Like super old traditions and all this, and TCU's maze. TCU, like, they're just fun and new, but also with history, slinging Sammy Baugh and Davey O'Brien. Like, it's this really cool mix, and I think that's pretty admirable about it. But
final or not really hypothetical, just I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this. So, who's feeling worse right now? Gary Patterson, SMU fans who lost their head coach and immediately took their rival to a national championship, or Baylor fans who had their best season in their history with the Sugar Bowl win, and then their rival shows them up the next year, and they have to play in a bowl game in their stadium that they lose really bad in the worst weather possible, and just got embarrassed by Air Force. Who's feeling
I'm sure
worse?
There's a little bit of jealousy between Gary Patterson, but at the same time, I feel like he'd be really proud and happy for a lot of the players that he recruited. So I feel like there's a lot of happiness in being like a proud, almost like father figure that he like recruited him, brought him into the program, and now that they're almost to their dream.
I also think we have to eliminate Patterson because everything I've seen seems like he really still has a lot of investment in TCU, really cares about it. There's that clip after they beat OU in Red River where he walks over to his staffer and is like, "What's the TCU score?" So like right after they just beat their rival, they're supposed to be celebrating, and he's interested in TCU still. He tweeted out support, so I would eliminate Patterson. I'll also go ahead and eliminate SMU because I think you would have to be truly delusional as an SMU fan, and I'm sure there are some.
There are plenty of examples. Sonny Dykes was a bad coach, according to all the SMU fans, and they were going to the Pac-12 and see you later, TCU. Have fun in the G5 because that's the only place you're going.
I don't think there are that many rational SMU fans who ever thought they were going to be in this position or even close to it, especially where they are. It's got to be Baylor. Like, Baylor was supposed to be this team, the small Texas team who makes this run, and does all this, and becomes like the third team in Texas essentially. TCU just completely usurped them, and I think that's just chef's kiss, beautiful, and especially
Baylor's
because
giving them that work right now in college basketball, though.
Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. Some things still have to remain the same. We can have a run here, but Jim Dixon is still Jim Dixon. That's all I gotta say.
Hey, to be determined. Stay tuned. I'm going back to the 2022 Big 12 football predictions, where Blake absolutely roasted me for putting TCU at number 4 in the Big 12. So stay tuned.
Oh yeah, it was bad. I was 6-6. I was like 6-6 is a great year this year, like a fantastic year. I was like, I would be happy for that Texas Bowl in a soulless Houston NFL stadium. Like, I would love that. No.
NRG. Ugh, that's funny. All right. Well, I think this is the podcast. This is the last college football game we're talking about this season. What a run. All the way back to, our week 0 picks, doing all of our conference predictions. It's been, honestly our best season yet. I've just truly loved doing this with all y'all, making the picks, and it obviously, I wish OU did better, but the fact that the Frogs are in the title, it's a really cool ending to a season, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this final chapter is written. And Blake, just I think I can speak for everyone here. Just the best of luck, and congratulations on the journey. But there's more to be done. So hopefully TCU brings home a title to the pod / the Shield, I guess. So
Shield needs one. The Shield needs one.
This one's for the Shield. Ugh, good stuff. All right, that has been the weekend spread. Season, I think this was season 5. Jeez.
Yeah. Season 5 finale.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much for listening all the way through. That's delete. That is Blake. That is definitely not Blake doing a crime.
Yes, that's a $50,000 fine right there.
Yeah, hey, you're just donating to the Shield, so
Ty's trying to get those trespassing charges against me, so I can't leave the state.
Incredible. But look, that's been the season, so we'll be back to talk about whatever happens in this game, either pure elation or probably a Big 12 basketball preview. But anyways, for me, Jameson, Ty, and Boatin Blake, this has been the Weekend Spread. Thank you all so much for listening this entire season. We'll see ya when we see ya.